Great. Well, thank you both. So thank you for coming with us, and welcome everyone to this the webinar that Cronofy are doing in partnership with SmartRecruiters. And really, what we're focusing on here is, well, I guess where this came from is so Cronofy did some research around candidate experience. We've been doing that for a number of years, and then we saw SmartRecruiters did a wonderful ebook about a kind of broader candidate experience opportunity. So it's like we're partners. We should actually talk about this stuff. So before we kind of press on and actually start talking about it, I'd love to introduce our two speakers today, Karin and Stephanie. Karin, would you like to make a start?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Adam, for partnering on this webinar with us. And then happy to be here with also you, Stephanie. So my name is Karin. I work for SmartRecruiters. I've been in the TA industry for, I want to say, a little bit over 10 years now. In pretty much all of the fields. So I managed and built a recruiting team for more niche recruiting, which was IT security in Germany. I worked in executive search for a Big Four, and I also did high volume hiring in India. So pretty much the whole range that you can see, all the fun. And then I switched over to the better side of life, to SmartRecruiters, where I started to be a consultant on change management projects, adoption projects. And SmartRecruiters, essentially, we have the ATS, we're the platform. This is the main part of the business, I would say. But then at the same time, we also focus heavily on the strategy. So we always say people, process, and technology. And I'm responsible now as program manager for the people and the process part, and to kind of marry that with the technology all together. I'm really happy to be here speaking about candidate experience, because I feel like this is such a crucial topic, especially at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, you've got quite some experience there, definitely. Stephanie, top that.
I don't know if I can. But hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie, calling from Las Vegas, Nevada. So I am in the US. My background is in TA enablement. So part of what I can bring to this conversation is, I am always part of the team, building the team and operations that is providing recruiters with the tools, with the processes, and with the data, and the knowledge to empower recruiting teams. So I have had experience both at large global private companies, pre-IPO, post-IPO scale-ups. So all of these different kind of ecosystems where the constant is a really, really great candidate experience. So I love being able to thread that through and chat a little bit today about what things I kind of think are universal, and then what things can actually be tailored to where your team currently is and what your hiring goals are. I've been in the recruitment space for same as Karin, like a little bit over 10 years, and just excited to be with Adam and Karin today to talk about something that I'm really, really passionate about, which is candidate experience.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's often that's one of the key things, is that actionable advice for the right size team that you are, and that can be often lost in these kind of conversations. I've also realized I forgot to introduce myself, so sorry about that. Adam Bird, CEO, co-founder of Cronofy. What Cronofy does is the kind of we're the kind of technology that powers scheduling in about 70 different applicant tracking systems, and now through an additional set of tooling, our scheduling assistant, we're providing extensions to SmartRecruiters, Greenhouse Lever to essentially power the scheduling there as well. And really, we've worked with so many product teams across a range of recruiting systems, and therefore across a range of industries, that we've kind of got this kind of helicopter view of all of the challenges and all of the demands that recruiters have around scheduling. So that was our initial kind of motivation for the candidate expectations report, is we couldn't find any kind of primary research around actually what it is candidates were going through. There's plenty for recruiters, which fine, they're important, but actually the candidates feel like the people we should really understanding their perspective. And I think we're kind of, organizations are coming around to that, which hopefully is a nice segue to the first question, which is kind of, why do we care? Who'd like to take this up first?
I can go ahead with this one, and I think it's a nice question also for Stephanie, because we've been in the space for those 10 years where I feel like the market has changed so much. I remember first time I was applying to a job, it was all about, oh, what do you know about this company and what can you do for us? And it was all in this kind of more serious kind of setting of what can you bring to the table as a candidate. And I think this has changed a lot, and also our numbers are proving this. I mean, we also, when we're going to show a QR code at the end of this webinar where I pull all the numbers from, but basically talent professionals, they're saying that to 64%, the market is going to change more in favor of the employees, of the candidates in the next 5 years. And I think we've already seen this kind of evolvement from like a employer market to an employee market. And I think one of the most crucial things is that businesses, they cannot hide anymore behind their fancy brand name, their fancy marketing. Everything is visible and everything is transparent. And one of the most crucial things is candidates want more, people want more. And in my opinion, they don't want anything out of the ordinary or anything that isn't rightfully so. They want to feel not as a candidate, but they want to feel the human experience. They want to be valued. They want to be valued in their time, even though there might be candidates that might not be as qualified and might not get hired, but they still want to have this human experience, that value of them. And I think this is why it's getting more and more important, especially because everything is visible. As I said, we have Glassdoor in Germany, we have Kununu, there's a ripple effect. So if you get negative reviews from candidates who were declined, this is going to really impact your business. The candidates are now impacting your business directly by giving negative reviews. And in the report, it also says that candidates that have a negative experience are 185% less. Just imagine that number, 185% less likely to be willing to refer someone to that company that they had a negative experience with. And I think this is one of those moments where we have to say, okay, we got to change something. So it's definitely point one, there's a more favorable market for candidates. Human experience is crucial. And then also keep in mind the ripple effect that we have. So those are my like big three. Why do we even care about this?
Yeah, and I think actually there was some research. It was a few years ago now, but one of the broadband providers in the UK discovered they were giving a poor candidate experience and they were churning their broadband. And so it was like directly hitting their bottom line. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Stephanie, how about you?
No, Adam, I was going to add on to that. That is such a good point. And, I've seen the degree of transparency, to Karin's point, just skyrocket from, working at a brand where we could kind of control how a candidate interacts with us, what they see, what they don't see. And that's completely just different now, even after a decade with Glassdoor and reviews and friends of friends. Like the market right now, which I think a lot of folks in this industry know, like we are seeing applications, and we'll talk about applications in a bit, but by the thousands per job. I know my network is quite small. I share with my friends where I applied, what that experience was like, would I recommend someone else apply there? Like that actually happens in my day-to-day life. So take that to like the degrees of connection you might have in your network. Like, why do we care? It's about your brand and what people might be saying about you. And for those that are on the call, like, I know we also have to kind of lobby or sell why we need budget or resources for these types of tools. And so another reason why I care a lot about it in my ops role is connecting that to the business impact. So Adam, exactly what you said, there are numerous examples around there, especially if you're currently working for a B2C type company where your applicants live or breathe or interact with your brand as consumers. It can make a really big hit on the bottom line. So relationships with your customer support team, your sales team, your marketing team can help you kind of triangulate some data to help you with how to have a much stronger candidate experience. And so connecting that to actually the business case and your profits and your revenue stream can be really important too for the brand. It might be a stretch. I'm always around to help talk about any of that, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that in our industry right now, connecting this back to business revenue can help all of us on the call kind of get the tools and the support that we need to help give candidates that experience that they expect.
Thank you. Yeah, I think actually with this kind of thing, I think about putting my kind of employer hat on, and that actually I want the best candidates. That's it. That's like the foundation of my business is that the best people want to work at my company, and I can encourage them and convince them that we are the best place for the next stage of their career. And if I'm giving them a bad experience, then they're just going to go somewhere else. Was it the US Bureau of Labor Statistics are saying January this year was the lowest month of employment since May 69? There are just so many jobs and so few candidates. So it's an absolute fight. And one thing we saw from our candidate expectation report is that communication was like the number one thing that candidates as the number one thing, most important thing in the recruitment process, just communicating with candidates. And I saw a stat on LinkedIn the other day about ghosting, and a number of people that candidates just get ghosted. And it's like, they're not going to stick around. You've lost them. That's it. They're gone. And to your point, they're going to be far less likely to even engage with you again. And you've kind of lost that person from your talent pool. So I think there's so many, the candidate's in a far stronger position. Back to your point, Karin, around early days when we were first looking for jobs, we were like, did we have to work hard to convince the employer? It's definitely flipped. It's a seller's market. So I think there's all sorts of reasons, but I think certainly I think Stephanie's point that linking it back to the business and ops goals is critical, because that's how you get the CFO, CEO to actually listen to the fact that recruiting is a strategic function. So there's about caring, and we talked about a couple of reports. I think what I'd be interested to do is run a bit of a poll. So what I'd like to know is, how are you measuring candidate experience today? Really? So hopefully that poll should appear any minute with my the kind of QI elves, I think. There you go. So it would be really great if you could fill that in. It's really just to kind of understand how do you know whether or not you're actually giving candidates good, bad experience, and we'll kind of we'll leave the poll up for a bit as we talk through the lesson. We'll kind of we'll share the results at the end of the next section. So moving on, as we are short of time, right? Let's talk about the pre-application experience. What is the pre-application experience? Talk to me.
I kind of consider it everything that a candidate can find about your organization before they even know if there's a job open. You want someone to be, you want it to be sticky. You want someone to go search for potentially, working at your company. It's everything they see and everything you put out into the universe before they actually click apply for a job.
And I think we can even go a step further. It's also everything they cannot see. So, I mean, if you're just mindlessly scrolling through LinkedIn or through Instagram, I mean, I'm still millennial, I still use Instagram, but like you scroll through it and you see this ad coming up, and then you see negative comments below it, or it's just like the things you don't even really consider because you're not looking, but you still you heard it before. And I think this is already where it starts, because it's not just a nice job ad that you put out there that is the pre-application experience. It's everything that is out there. If you find it or don't find it, if you subconsciously see it, I think it's this whole entirety of like what is happening, not just this job ad, because I think a lot of our customers actually, they think, okay, pre-application experience, a nice job site, I have a nice job description, you click on the button, it's easy, perfect pre-application experience. That's not it. You got to curate a whole experience around it to make it good entirely. So for me, pre-application experience is everything Stephanie said, and plus everything you don't see necessarily as an employer or put out there in the world.
Yeah, I think what we've seen this change in the kind of the sales world as well, is that people kind of pre-inform themselves so much more before they'll even speak to someone, before they'll even consider applying for something, because there's so much information out there, and we're putting that out there all the time. Should we have a quick look at what is the status quo right now? Talk me through what you're both seeing. Obviously, your employers don't do this at all, but what are you seeing in the market?
So I think in market a lot now is about company culture, company values. And I think this is it's a really important factor. Actually, we have 77% of global workers, they feel that company values and the purpose are really important to them to selecting an employer. The status quo, though, is, and I think Stephanie is going to touch upon this a little later, is that there's a discrepancy. You can't just put out there a culture and values and then not inherently have them in the company. This is the discrepancy that makes your pre-application experience just really, really bad if you say we have a lot of transparency within it, but then you don't show the candidate any transparency within the process. So I think this is really out in the market that false sentiment of safety of companies saying, yeah, we have values, but do you live them? Are they actual values, or are they just buzzwords you put out there in the market? And I think that's a little bit, unfortunately, the status quo at the moment.
And to add, like, to kind of tweak this to like where I see a big opportunity is in the talent communities. You know, I've always had those on my wish list to build at a lot of companies that I've been in. I've seen when they're done well, and I see like just a really big opportunity. So for those on the call that, you know, we'll talk later about application volume, communication being so important to candidates, and where you can actually control a bit of the messaging that goes out could be in things like talent communities. So I'm kind of seeing right now in the market, it's a really beneficial place to help nurture a brand with candidates by building out these communities. And I see that as a really big opportunity right now that, you know, if you haven't thought about those, if they're not on maybe your wish list, it might be something to kind of noodle on with your teams after this call.
Well, actually, let's go to the next slide. Like, what should we be doing? Do you want to just what could teams be doing to actually action that, Stephanie?
Yeah, I think it's around understanding, like kind of what I talked about at the beginning, like what are some of your company goals? Are you in a hyper growth stage? Are you looking for specific pockets of talent? If you don't kind of know what that is, this is kind of the call to action to go seek that out, because that will help you put together a really strong plan for what parts of the candidate experience you want to invest in. So I just talked about, you know, a talent community. Those could be great for teams that are seeing a huge influx of applications, that know they want to nurture and source within a talent pool that has already kind of signaled interest in your company. Other things to be doing are, you know, knowing the type of talent that you're looking for in your pipeline so that you know who to move to a talent community and who you actually want to move forward in the process. We talk a lot about, Adam, you kind of talked about the importance of communication for candidates. Something that hit home with me when I was reading through the report is, you know, I got curious about like the definition of communication. And there's so much nonverbal communication, kind of what Karin and I were just talking about. Everything in your brand that's kind of out there is all this nonverbal, something you might not have control over, or you do based on what you write. But you're signaling just all of these messages. And so really taking an audit of what you're putting out there and what your job descriptions look like, what they're saying, your employees' LinkedIn profiles, what they're saying, what they're projecting, what the brand and Glassdoor is projecting, all these nonverbal pieces. If we know communication is the number one thing that candidates are looking for, I would challenge all of us to not just think of that as like what you say to them on the phone or what you put in an email. It's actually communicating all of these nonverbal things throughout your whole process.
Thank you. Karin, what are you saying is good?
So for me, I think kind of ties into what Stephanie also said with the CRM, with the talent community. And I like to think of the candidates as consumers. For me, they are 100% consumers. And as we all know, if we ever ordered something, you fall into a talent pool because you receive all those subscription emails. If you just ordered a sweater or something. So I really see also the CRM piece and the talent community piece is really, really strong. But what I also see is definitely the technology. So just imagine, we're staying with the same example. You're looking for a sweater. You're like scrolling on your phone. The filters are not adaptable. You can't really, you know, the order process is difficult because you can't pay by PayPal and all this. And users and consumers, they're expecting the best of breed when they shop online. And it's the same for jobs. They shop online for jobs. And this is why we need a good technology. We have a whopping like 92% of candidates who click an apply button and never actually apply. They don't fill out the application. Why? Because the technology is not good. It's not up to par and it's not up to expectations. If I cannot parse my resume, if I cannot connect LinkedIn, if I have to upload again all the information that's already in my CV, your pre-application experience is broken. That's not how it works anymore. I think the expectations are way higher. And I know, Adam, you're going to give a couple interesting stats to this one later on for the candidate expectations, also for interviewing. But it's the same that goes hand in hand with self-scheduling or scheduling altogether. If there's a whole back and forth without technology and the support of the tech, then the pre-application experience is just not good anymore. And if I now think about how do I pay for my sweater, can I pay it by PayPal, or is it really complicated? It's the same for how can I apply? Is the application process a hassle? Well, then I'm also expecting like the interview process to be a drag, to the offer process being like, oh my gosh, like, do they actually do everything on printout and by fax or by, I don't know, mailing? So I really think we have to do better. And it's crazy because two-thirds of candidates actually see an opportunity for a better experience when they apply to roles. The candidates see it. So if they see it, maybe, and this goes hand in hand with us, like, how do you evaluate your candidate experience? The question we asked earlier, just ask them, what can we do better? And I think this is also something that's crucial. But for me, definitely, your candidate is your consumer, and that's how it's going to stay. And this is also how you should treat them.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point around the expectations. You're setting expectations that this is actually what it's going to be like working at that company. And did you talk before around the kind of principles, values, etc., being exuded by the company? You say this one thing, but then it's a very long form and it takes ages and no one communicates with you. There's a dissonance there, a disconnect, which is you're just going to put people off. So anyway, let's we just stopped the poll, which is great. Before we took at what we think you should measure. So post-hiring surveys is the primary way people are measuring candidate experience. Be interesting, I think. I don't know if you have anything on this, Karin, around whether or not the hiring surveys are filled in. Is there like a success bias there where, like, if you get the job, of course I'm going to fill in the survey if I don't get the job?
Yeah. I also know of companies that actually they give you kind of like a bonus if you fill in good reviews. So I don't know how valuable it is to actually get feedback from the candidates you hired. Obviously it is if it's anonymous. So never put a name down. That's the first rule. But then what I think we kind of forget is the candidates that we rejected, which is usually the 80 to 90%. And the 80 to 90%, they're allowed in the market if you're not good. So I would make really sure that if you have a good pre-application experience, you are in contact with those candidates and they're more than happy to help you to improve your process. They will give you feedback. I think most companies don't invest enough to kind of get that feedback from rejected candidates because they're like, okay, they're gone. We don't have contact to them anymore. And that ties in so nicely. And I'm so happy you said that, Stephanie, with the talent communities. Because if you had someone that applied, you can move them into the community and reach out to them and be like, hey, you were a candidate before. Would you be happy to fill this out and help us improve our experience? And I think this is why it's so nicely to have a talent community of candidates who applied, who were rejected, but there might be the good voice on the market for you to kind of carry that voice of like, this is actually there was a positive pre-application experience.
Right. I need to stop being interested and start being a host. I need to think about timing. So what should we be measuring? Do you want to pick out some highlights here about how we can measure the pre-application experience? Anything that sort of you want to sort of call out?
For me, it's always measure what matters. So don't even collect all this data if you're not going to do anything with it. This is why keep it simple. Pick out one that has the most optimization value to you. So if you're maybe you don't have engagement, so maybe double check your social media engagement. If you continuously like put a lot of effort into your campaigns, so for example, for the talent communities that Stephanie mentioned, then maybe look at the open rate. Is it actually interesting what you're sending out? So measure what matters, keep it simple. You can measure everything, but are you actually going to use it? This is always my first advice to customers. And we have a lot of measures that are possible. Just pick out the one that is right for you.
Stephanie, anything you want to add?
I think that is just perfectly said. I will not
Okay.
I'll add to that. That was absolutely perfect. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Okay. So we've done the pre-application, all the stuff we're in many ways as a recruiting team, it's quite hard to control. Now we're in the recruiting team's domain. We're into the application experience. So let's. What's the status quo right now? We've talked a bit about this already. So is this what we're seeing in the market? Is this what people are doing? Is this what candidates are experiencing? What's your feel for what's out there?
Mm-hmm. I think Karin hit something like that is just so important with this, is that it's 2023. What you're putting out there in terms of your application experience is a brand of what candidates would expect as employees in your company. So clunky application processes, processes where you're kind of duplicating information from your resume back into, data fields, lengthy questions that aren't going to be used. This is a signal of like how your recruitment teams or whoever's in charge of that, how they value time, how they value the data that they receive. And I think that sends a really strong signal on what kind of company they could be joining. So kind of really putting yourself in the shoes of a candidate. If you haven't even applied, like after this call, go and apply, go through the process yourself and see what that feels like again. I'm really bad about it. I don't do it every once in a while. I need to set a goal to maybe every quarter go through and apply for the job and figure out what could be redundant, what is duplicative, what kind of legal requirements are there now in certain regions. Here in the US, we have a lot of legislation around pay transparency. New York is passing laws on how we have to define how AI is used in our processes. Are those up to date? And those all signal to candidates what kind of environment they might be joining. You're kind of the first entry point for a lot of people into your entire company, which is a big burden to bear, but it also can be really, really empowering to kind of be front of market and how you present that to candidates.
I think that's a really important point about the data capture, because we have this idea that, we should capture it just in case it might be useful. And to your point, Karin, around measuring, just capture what you need, you can act upon. But also we're living in a world where privacy and personal data privacy is super, super important. So the less information we can take from candidates, the better, and the less we have to manage and maintain from a security compliance perspective. So I think there's a win in many ways, because you're shortening the process, you're not taking anything you don't need, and you're making your company more compliant with legislation. Sorry, Karin, what would you like to add to this?
I think that's pretty much spot on. I think we all agree on this, and especially with all the data that's being captured from us, I think we were pretty free in giving out information a couple of years ago, because it was all so new and exciting, and we didn't know what terrible things people could do with our data. And nowadays it's getting more and more restrictive. I see that people don't want to put out too much of their privacy. Obviously, there's like Insta and TikTok and Snapchat. You put out stuff that you want to put out, but you don't want to be forced to do it. And I think we really have to consider this when we ask for candidate data throughout the whole process. And exactly as Stephanie said, like, do we really have to send them everything as a candidate, or what do we do with the data? Don't ask
I think
much.
Certainly one thing we've seen as well from candidates is there's an expectation. It's like this post-pandemic kind of cliche almost, but like 2/3 of candidates told us that they expect more use of tech from employers in the process. They understand that this is a arduous process for everyone, and anything you can do to streamline it is expected. But I think more importantly was the kind of 56% of US candidates said responsiveness was the most important thing. Now, the US were surprised, the most impatient nation, but you're still talking about and the idea that people will apply and don't hear is just gobsmacking. Not even just an auto response, but very quickly after, some human response from a recruiter basically buys you some time for that, and makes the candidate feel, okay, actually, whilst I understand technology in the process, actually someone is looking at this. Actually, as someone has received and acknowledged my application. So actually, I'm going to give them a bit more time because they've done. And so you can use tools at your disposal to give yourself more time, I think.
That is, and I know this is not a conversation on automation, but you're hitting on a really good point of, as more things in our process as talent acquisition professionals can be automated, ideally it's opening up more space for the personal connections. We can't scale or automate everything. Automate the things that you can, so that, you know, your report is showing exactly what, yes, I'm moving on to the,
yeah, no, I realize
exactly
I should
what candidate expect. So use that, hopefully, you know, additional time that the automation is providing you to build those personal anecdotes or personal connections that, you know, the technology can't automate today.
Well, it always astounds me. Recruiters, for me, in my experience, recruiters are people.
Yeah.
They don't get into recruiting to do admin. That's way down on their list of things to do. So actually use the tech to free up the time to do the bit you actually are really good at and love doing.
Absolutely. And I think if we start just thinking about this process, as you said, it's like they barely receive a thank you note after they applied. So it's 58% say, only 50% say they receive a thank you note after they applied, which is insane. I ordered something from Amazon, like a huge global enterprise, like whatever I order, I always get a thank you note, but I don't get one once I made my resume, I sent this in, I spent time getting to know the company, and then I don't even get a thank you note, but I get one when I order a sweater or I don't know, something else. So it's just crazy to me. And is, as you say, like what time do we have to spend with the candidates? So where are the touch points? And I think this is where, Stephanie, you said sometimes we have to apply to our own roles, because then we feel like where are the touch points that we actually need the human connection. So I want to have the pre-application process should be automated. Ideally, we'll have a chatbot that just responds to, you know, the simple questions like, where is it located? Is this role still open, etc. I can apply. Okay, what is the first time I want to speak to a person? Well, maybe when I pass the screening that all the hard facts in my CV are correct. Well, okay, this might be the first time. So I really think we have to think about those touch points where we actually need a human to discuss. I don't want to discuss with a chatbot how my contract is going to look like, or my bonus, or my variable. This is not the point where I want to speak to a machine. This is the point I want to exchange and kind of see also the reaction of my counterpart. And then just a quick comment also to like all this data connection that I see still a lot in the market. A lot of companies are still asking for CVs. And for some blue collar roles, I like in my head, I'm like, why the hell are you asking for a CV? This person is going to deliver a parcel. This person needs to have like the understanding of the language. They don't have to go through a huge written test. They don't have to. Why do you need a CV? So in my head, I'm always like, measure what matters and collect what matters. Because if someone is applying for a social media role, maybe just look at their social media, maybe collect their how many followers they have, what they put out there in the market. So I think there are so many aspects where we can improve this whole experience. But namely, it's like value their time, see which process you can automate with the tech and where you need the human touch points, and then don't ask them for too much, because then they're just not going to apply altogether.
I think it's interesting you both kind of brought up the human touch, because actually this is where our research kind of flips on its head. So whereas US candidates' responsiveness was like 56% was like the most important thing, actually human touch for candidates in the US, only 18% said it was important. Whereas actually France and Germany were like 54, 53%. And so almost there's like almost like this kind of diagram where you've got expectations of automation and responsiveness and expectations of human touch. And I think what we're saying is why not have both? That you can use technology to really, and especially in a market where candidates have low expectations of human touch, if you can turn around and say, well, actually provide the human touch and the responsiveness, then you're going to be so much better than everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I love this term, is like, speak your candidate's love language. So if you realize like they need more,
can you repeat that? Speak your candidates.
The candidate's love language. So I was like,
language.
how do they like to communicate? Do they need more help? Maybe it's an older candidate that doesn't, is not super comfortable with the tech. give them the option of like, here's a chatbot, but also give them the option to call you up and ask those questions in person. And I think this is where we need to be a little bit more mindful of, you know, inclusivity, because some people may just not feel comfortable with tech. Other people feel really uncomfortable speaking to a person directly, maybe in a first call. I mean, I don't respond to anyone calling me if I don't know the caller number. So why would someone like, why would someone call me or a company call me? I just applied there. I'm not going to pick up my phone. Like I expect a WhatsApp or an email. So really kind of try to understand the candidates out there in the market, and don't just brush them over one criteria and say they're all the same, because they're all going to be different.
Stephanie, anything more to add before we move on?
No, I mean, I think it's to your point, Adam. You said recruiters were people, so don't lose that art of the individualized experience for a candidate, where you can put that in there. And when we get to offers, like that could make all the difference.
Yeah. But yeah, I think candidates love language is a new phrase for me, and I think Lena in the chat is agreeing. So what's a measure? You talked about, was it 92% don't complete applications?
Yeah, 92%. Isn't it crazy? They click on apply, but they don't complete the application. I think this is why application completion rate is high up there. But then at the same time, assessment completion rate. So if you have a role open that doesn't require a full application, but maybe just an assessment of, you know, I don't know, some sort of thing. Yes, I can deliver this, or yes, I can do like basic math, or yes, I can fill in like a timesheet, etc. Give them an assessment. Why would you give them a the task to fill in a CV? I'm all for hiring for skills. If you haven't realized yet, so I'm all for assessments, and stop asking for letters of motivation, because I mean, ChatGPT writes a better one than I would, so I would never do it myself anymore.
But I do see people starting to experiment with like SLAs around time to recruit first real contact from a recruiter.
Yeah,
so I think that's a really just to kind of sense check for the team. Are we actually giving this, we're delivering this human touch? Where are we with this? And just starting to measure and see that data is, you can then start to see, actually, well, hold on, it's like 5 days. That's no good.
Yeah,
we should do more. Anyway, stop. You need to stop.
Sorry.
I'm leaving you on. Right, we are so over time. This is too interesting. Right, interview experience. So, poll. It's poll time. How long does it take you to schedule your interviews today? That poll is going to appear very quickly in the chat, thanks to the QILs. Sorry, I just realized that's a very British TV reference, which no one's going to get. So I'm going to stop saying that. Right. Okay. So the status quo, the candidate experience for interview. Stephanie, anything you'd like to share on the kind of interview experience?
Yeah, one point of view I'll just throw out for everyone, kind of taking my ops hat on. I've worked really internally a lot with our interview teams. Taking all of this and flipping it internally, what are your interviewers seeing? The power of tools like auto scheduling tools. It's for the candidate, but I know this is a candidate expectation webinar, but hear me out. Like, when you can automate things for your interview teams as well, like what are some of the norms you have across your business? What can you book over? What do interviewers know about your scheduling tool? What kind of expectations on, communication and time, just like a candidate with your interviewers? It's really, really important, especially in my operations kind of roles that I've had. And where I've seen this, the why on that is, when you can reduce all this cognitive load for your interviewers, they show up better for your candidates. So the automation actually, pays it forward in how people are going to show up for your candidates, providing them with a better experience.
Yeah, recruiters are very much at the kind of this nexus between the candidate and the hiring manager, and SLAs around that it's very, and they've got jobs and demands on their time and fragile bodies, and all these things can go wrong in the process, and it's making that as easy as possible to enable you to deliver is super valuable. I appreciate we've just jumped straight into what we should be doing about it. So let's just do that. Yeah, let's we all know how bad it is right now. Karin, anything you'd like to talk about too about?
Yeah, just a little bit around, again, the human touch and the value of the candidates. because we see that the top 3 reasons that candidates actually withdraw from an active recruiting experience, and I'm really speaking not from the process. I want to say this, it's a recruiting experience. It's not a process. You're not moving a parcel. You're moving a candidate into an experience. And the top 3 reasons why candidates withdraw are actually, they're saying, my time was disrespected during the interview process. I think, Stephanie, this goes hand in hand with what you were saying, like help your interviewers and hiring managers to show up like with already, you know, motivated and having their head free from all the admin stuff. And this also helps to respect the candidate's time a lot more. And then the second reason is that the recruiting process took too long. And that's a little bit, I think, a little bit iffy. So it's like, what is too long? There are some candidates that they might need, you know, a week between 2 interviews because they just need to recover. Maybe they're stressed about it. Maybe they have to prep something. There's a lot going on at home. So just like kind of gauge your candidates, give them multiple options to schedule. And this is why, Adam, I'm not saying that because also we're partnered, but this is why with Cronofy, I obviously love like the self-scheduling app. And I think this is, if a candidate says the recruiting process took too long, well, put the power in the hands of the candidate and say, okay, you schedule the next interview, you reschedule if you don't feel well today. And I think this also kind of gives a feeling of human touch because we give them the power, we give them those decision processes themselves. And I think this is really, really crucial for candidates today in the market. And then one more point I just want to touch upon is structured interviewing. If candidates say they were not respected during a recruiting process, it's a lot, or the time isn't valued. It's a lot of times because we're still asking basic, just gonna say dumb questions. If I still ask for your 5 weaknesses, your 5 strengths, what do you want to be in 5 years? I will drop out of an interview process, to be quite honest. You need a structured interview and you need to ask smart questions. If you don't know how to structure your interviews because you have never done it, then just start really simple. So company values, is that a fit? Yes, no. Technical fit? Yes, no. And we actually seen with one of our customers, Colliers in EMEA, that they reported a 25% increase in first-year hire retention just by structuring the interviews, because they learned so much more about the candidates. It was so much more in depth, and they actually valued the candidates so much that this information that they were given, they could use it, and this improved the retention by 25%, which to me is just crazy. I mean, it's just a really good number. But this is why, for me, structured interviewing is high up there on the list, and then the self-scheduling.
Well, sourcing candidates, it's outrageously expensive from an organizational perspective. And so then if you then lose that candidate because they weren't a good fit, then you've got to start again. And the kind of organizational costs, I think there's all sorts of. It's interesting you sort of talk about the scheduling process. Obviously, this is my specialist subject. But one thing we saw in the report was like half of candidates have left an application process because they couldn't schedule an interview in time. Like, which is bonkers. Just setting up an interview. And I think there's a difference between scheduling the interview and the interview happening. And to your point, Karin, actually, I do need, as a candidate, I need a week just to make sure I'm set, or I've got to fit around some other work. Yeah, actually, I've got a job. Right now, I've got a job and I've got to fit around that job. But I can schedule it. I can give me a link. I can schedule it in an hour. Brilliant. And that's super responsive, and everyone knows what's happening, but you're putting that power in the hands of the candidate. So I think there's some really interesting ways people often, when they look at sort of time to hire metrics, they look at kind of overall, how can we get the candidate into the interview process through as quickly as possible. And I think that's kind of slightly the wrong, it's kind of a bit cart and horse, in that actually what you want is how quickly can we get the interview scheduled? And so for candidates who are up for going straight through the process as quickly as possible, we can support that. For candidates who need a bit more time, we can still support that. But it's actually those dead times in the time to hire process, that's where you lose just weeks without anything happening with candidates. And candidates do just walk. That's because, like I say, as we've said, they've got options. Anything else you wanted to add, Stephanie?
I don't think so. Not on this topic.
Okay, great. Well, no, we're still moving on. So, in terms of what to measure, yeah, we talked about time to schedule. Cancellation rate is an interesting one. We see that where candidates are sort of basically just not turning up for interviews. The other one to measure is rescheduling, which we should have put on here, was rescheduling by hiring managers.
Yes.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That is a powerful data point I have gone to executives with using, and been able to say, one, there's a cost associated this. Like if you don't kind of know the time your internal business is spending interviewing, that's something that would be a really great measure to have. And then how many times that's rescheduled. A lot of times that is the magic data point to help an executive or a leader of a function move interviewing as a visual priority for their team. That one piece of data, a lot of times will get my ask on a slide at a town hall meeting because I showed how many times we've rescheduled, and that's actually could be what's impacting time to filling a seat.
Right. Yeah. Of course, yeah, because we're just kicking candidates down the road and yeah, it'd be fine. I've got this other fire that's burning or something. And the reason you've got the fire burning is your team's too small. And so
just one comment on the no-show rate. And I think this goes with Adam, what you were saying with like the SLAs for how long does it take us to schedule an interview? I like to look at the time it took a candidate to schedule. So when did the candidate get back to me? Because we do see that a lot. If you send out a self-scheduling link and it takes the candidate a long time to schedule, maybe there's going to be a no-show because maybe they're not as involved in the process. But I like to monitor that. How fast did they get back to me? Also with a feedback or with a question, or if obviously we're giving them a task, how fast do they get back to us? And I think the option for them to then reschedule without having to call and find another appointment, but really to reschedule themselves without having this anxious call of being like, oh gosh, I got to call them and cancel. I think if we give them the option to reschedule without any human touch, I think this is perfect because this is going to drop the no-show rate actually, because they can reschedule. And as a recruiter, obviously rescheduling an interview, we're always like, oh, this person, like probably like they don't want to, but stuff happens in everyone's life. So the first time I was really mindful about it. And I think it's just so much easier if they can just reschedule themselves. And actually the no-show rates are dropping because they're happier. It's a better time for them.
Yeah, you can fit in around their lives and their work. I just want to put on the thread, you mentioned around this kind of almost getting a feel for the intent of the candidate or the motivation of the candidate based on their responsiveness. Do you see anything in any tooling that allows you to kind of, rather than just your feels?
Or are we just creating a question? You got me there.
Really good question. I'm trying to think of ways you could, but then I think it goes back to Karin's point of like, okay, what are we going to do with the information if we asked? My gut is like, that's like the power of when we get to the offer stage, I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, but
well, we can jump ahead.
Those questions in a call helps with the offer stage. How early in the experience, Karin, I really liked what you said. I'm going to stop the word process. How early in the experience are we understanding candidate motivations? And the earlier we can do that and the more consistently we communicate and double check on it, hopefully the more seamless the offer experience is. The worst thing is when you get to an offer and now you're talking about salary expectations. Now you're talking about, start dates and cross offers and everything else. Like so much of this can be accumulated earlier in the experience. And as I'm saying this out loud, Adam, maybe it's less around, I'm just totally spitballing, but maybe it's less around how does the technology ask these questions? And maybe how do we really use our technology to store the answers to those questions so that we keep it in things like talent communities, maybe a recruiter, hopefully everyone can go on vacation, they're out, maybe another recruiter is handling the offer. Maybe we give another offer in the future. Like where are we actually storing that information to help teams understand themes, have that information readily available for comp teams and hiring managers at the point of offer. So maybe I actually do have an answer. And it's less around what we ask in the technology, but how we store it in the technology right now.
Yeah, I do think it's also like what can the tech do? So everyone's now talking about predictive analytics. So as you say, for the offer process, if you already know this candidate always takes, 3 days to respond, okay, what's our prediction then for the offer? The candidate's probably also going to take at least 3 or more days to respond to, even if they did just reviewing the offer. So I really think it's about the tech supporting us in any way, shape or form it can, also for storing the information. Where do you do that so that you have also then the right means to act on it?
Yeah. So just before we go on to offer experience, it was a wonderful segue, Stephanie, but I've just realized we need to do the poll. So poll results. So hold that segue. So what we're seeing from the poll, 2/3 of people take 2 to 6 days to schedule an interview, which you can imagine in a 3-interview process, that's like 2 weeks of dead time in the time to hire, which is bonkers. And yeah, but this chimes actually with what we see customers who arrive at Cronofy. It's normally 3 to 6 days is kind of what they're seeing. And with a self-serve scheduling tool properly set up and the way it works and designed to work with the wonderful messiness of recruiting scheduling in the real world, you get that down to on average about 2 hours. And that gives the candidate complete control and gets them through the process as quickly as they feel able to go through the process. And I think that's the really, really important point you pulled out, Karin. Okay, right. So we're on the last section and we're almost sort of ish on time. So let's talk about the status of the offer process. So we're saying it takes too long. Stephanie, anything you want to add? Because this is kind of right in your wheelhouse, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, the lengthy process. A lot of it is, for any ops folks or people who do have kind of the access to your ATS and your scheduling tools, the things that I've been able to do are, what is the information you need at the end? What's the blocker? I've been in situations where we're constantly, we find that the offer process is really blocked for almost 48 hours with approvals on a comp range or getting an understanding from finance if we can hire for this role. Those are questions a lot of times that can be solved and asked at the kickoff or the beginning of a process with those teams. I know we talk so much about having an intake meeting with a hiring manager and aligning on expectations on a job description and what we're expecting in an interview process. But there's other partners in that, which is, your comp team, your finance team, your onboarding team, when a start date would be reasonable. If you can kind of move as much to look at your offer list, all the questions you need, all the things your recruiters are filling out, how early can you get that information? Can you auto-populate things? Is there a good Slack channel? Are there SLAs and expectations? That's been a huge one for me, is SLAs with partner teams.
Right.
So yeah, I think that can help with the lengthy process, which then in turn helps with the candidate experience.
And just to sort of do full circle, we talked at the kind of start of the process around sort of transparency and making it clear, putting the comp, the offer, the salary actually on the job ad, sets everyone's expectations, and you don't get to that kind of final, oh hold on, I was expecting X and you said X minus Y. I've just wasted all of my time. So
really quickly, Adam, if you don't mind, someone asked a question. Some of the SLAs that I've seen in the past, and everyone's unique for their own business, but if you need finance or the comp team to approve, we set SLAs that needs to be done before the end of the next business day. If something is at X% out of the band, what kind of approvals do you need? If a candidate might be negotiating a new salary, really clearly writing out, at X amount comp ratio, we go and talk to the VP of the team, or we need to go talk to the comp team. So really just mapping out scenarios and setting some time limits. A big one is, if someone's out of office or not there, who's on the approval, who is their proxy. These all seem very simple, but when you have them on paper and you have, especially we all work in such a remote world, when you have them in a central place for your recruitment team, it makes the decision-making process way more even transparent internally.
Yeah, and I think what I've seen certainly was that kind of agreeing that playbook for that role, and there's a template, and agree the playbook for the role also then gets more buy-in with the hiring managers as well, because they're kind of agreeing toward their, okay, all right, fine, I need you to find me some candidates. Okay, this is what I'm agreeing to do in order to find to allow you to find candidates and ultimately hire. Thank you for doing my job, Stephanie. And
sorry.
No, I appreciate it. I missed it. So Corinne, anything you wanted to add about this?
I just hope everyone realizes how crucial Stephanie's comment was about the intake meeting. I mean, this is just an intake meeting is not hiring manager, recruiter. An intake meeting is the whole shebang. It's the finance, is the who's going to be on the interview panel. Are we pipelining the candidates who are then maybe expected to get an offer with our HR department so that they can take over? No one's on vacation. Do we know who's going to approve the contract? Is that person on vacation? I mean, it's so freaking crucial what Stephanie just said. I mean, when I talk to customers and they say, well, yeah, we have an intake meeting, we sent this form to the hiring manager. Great, that's a good start. I'm not diminishing your work, but please improve that, because this is how we get out of this lengthy process with the offer altogether. And then what I always like to work on with my customers is kind of figure out what kind of roles are you hiring for. So if we're hiring high volume, then yes, obviously the offer is probably like it's standardized. You send it to HR, they're taking over for any questions. We see this a lot in niche and executive recruiting. The candidate wants to speak to their recruiter. So brief your recruiters on labor laws, on contracts, because this is going to make the process a lot shorter. If your recruiter always has to go back to the HR department and ask questions about labor laws, about the contract, about the bonus, the comp situation, it's going to this is going to stretch out the process, and you'll lose trust with executives because they expect you to know your job. So definitely look at what kind of offers you're sending out. Is it niche? Is it IT? Is it high volume? And then adapt the different situations to it and teach your people. I mean, just train them. Same thing for interviews. Train your interviewers, please. And don't just let them go like roam free and ask whatever they want.
But I think you both hit on a point, actually, because what you're describing there is empowering the recruiting team to actually make an offer in a timely fashion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And back to candidates want responsiveness. So if they're sitting there with several offers on the table, the one that comes back and says yes, they're going to more likely take that one. If they've got any indication that you're not going to be responsive to them.
Exactly. And this is why you need such a good recruiting team, because you expect your recruiters to know, okay, they call up the candidate. I had this so many times. They call up the candidate says, I have another offer. What else can you offer me? And then I can actually go ahead and negotiate with the candidate directly on the phone, because I know this is my range. This is the bandwidth I have. I know the regulations. I know our comp and benefit program. So obviously I'm like really quick to make a new offer. And this is why we need to enable our recruiters. If you don't trust your recruiters to do this job, well, then you're doing actually a shit job of training them, or you have mishired. This is my just take on it. For not for everything. Obviously we have exceptions like high volume, etc., where it's just like too much volume coming through. But for really important niche roles, definitely you need a good team to do that.
Okay, we're almost at the top of the hour. So most important metric, both pick one.
I'll take the offer rejection reasons.
Okay.
Offer rejection reasons.
Right. Okay. That's kind of like your survey, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What do teams need to do? Take away from this.
Here's my takeaway. We covered so much. There is so many steps in this candidate experience. Go from here. For those that, do the survey, pick one thing that you think is kind of in the red, take some tips and focus on that, and then remeasure. I think where I have gone wrong, where I've seen teams do wrong, is they're trying to rehash their entire process after a webinar like this. Take one thing and make some improvement on it and watch it work. And then you'll get the buy-in to kind of touch the rest of the experience.
It's what's the minimum effort to deliver the maximum value you can do. And then just iterate on there. Definitely. Karin, what's your one takeaway, please?
Yeah, I want to steal Stephanie's takeaway, but I'm going to go with, we covered a lot in 1 hour. There's obviously more to cover. Don't forget the candidate experience doesn't stop with the offer. It continues with the onboarding experience, and it goes on with the employee experience. So don't forget about these parts. Obviously, we couldn't cover them because it's a lot of time, but at the same time, those are important as well. And I'm still going ahead and stealing Stephanie's one. Just pick one thing and just optimize that.
Well, that's my one too. So, right. So lots more on these downloads. I think one of the team are going to put links to both of these in the chat. So do download them, do read them. We just glanced over, sort of skirted over lots of valuable data there. Thank you both for your time. It's been fascinating. It's made it very difficult for me as kind of host to keep everything on time. With that, thank you. Have wonderful days, evenings, wherever you are, and I hope you are able to improve your recruiting processes.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.